You talk about the democratic deficit in the party. You say reform needs reform.
And at the beginning of the general election, I said to Richard, you know, when this election is over, assuming we get the seats and the number of votes we think we're going to get or, you know, do well, we've got to move to democratisation. You can't create a movement of people making the arguments for the sovereignty of the UK through our democratic parliament and yet have a massive democratic deficit ourselves.
So specifically, what do you mean when you say you want to see the party have more democracy?
Yeah, so the party at the moment is structured as a limited liability company with 15 shares, 8 of which are owned by Nigel. And that gives Nigel basically complete control of the private limited party. And that worked very well as an insurgent party, getting it on the map. But now we have an obligation to the 4.1 million people who voted for us. And so we have a movement to whom we are obliged. And we are all about the democracy in the United Kingdom. We're all about British sovereignty. And I think it therefore is required, particularly if Nigel is serious, and I hope he is, about reform becoming the government in 2029. We've got to democratise before we get to 2020. Can you imagine fighting an election to become the government of the country when one man owns or controls the party? It's untenable. So there's a discussion that the party has to have now. It's not a knee-jerk reaction to my being fired. I made a speech on this 2 weeks ago in Wellingborough, where I was standing, and the article that you read in the Sunday Times was actually drafted before I was fired, for what it's worth. It was always coming on Sunday.
OK, so specifically, when you talk about the democracy, do you mean it should be a party with membership, where members have a vote and members have the power to remove the leader?
Yeah, so all political parties are structured so that members basically have a say in the creation of party policy. There are elections that take place, particularly for the party leader. But beyond that, you also have committees and structures and so on that ensure that those have a say, a genuine say in the way stuff moves forward. And that is critical.
What would you say to people, a lot of people who are saying you're giving reforms critics precisely what they want? You're causing a civil war. You're causing revolt within the ranks. The party doesn't need that right now. It's only just got its feet under the table.
This is not a civil war. This is something that I've been... It's a debate about how we structure this party and making sure that we are true and act with principles and integrity to the movement that we've created. That movement doesn't belong to us. We're obliged to that movement, and we must now act like a proper party. This country will only prosper if reform forms a government. And I don't care whether I'm deputy leader or not. Couldn't give a damn. What I want to do is make sure that Reform UK, where I have absolutely, with Richard, created that movement, I give it every opportunity to be a principled party with integrity that can win that general election in 2029. But I have to talk about the principles and the foundations of which I think the party will be successful. What's critical to me is that political expediency and cronyism never take precedence over principle and integrity. We've got to change politics for good. The way the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have governed us for 27 years is unacceptable. So, yes, of course, I'd love to go on contributing to an entity where I've put my heart and soul, and I think have been, you know, quite a big contributor and responsible for the creation of this wonderful movement. But it's got to be with principles, and so my principles come first, I'm afraid. There's no personal grievance. This is about doing the right thing for the party and the country.
Do you think this is a healthy conversation to have? Because critics of the party, you know, enemies of the party might start saying the same things, and I guess the party will need to know how to answer those questions.
Much better to have this discussion 5 years out from a general election.
Ben Habib, thank you very much for joining us. I think it's a very, very healthy conversation to have out in the open. Thanks for joining us here in the studio.